But first, Happy New Year's, everyone. I don't know about you, but to me it feels like it's the first year where we're not in 2020 anymore. Yes, it's the first summer in 4 years here in Australia that hasn't been dominated by deadly bushfires, COVID lockdowns, or scary new variants. Of course, the upshot of that is the media has been absolutely scrambling for news stories to report on. I mean, look, somehow this made the national news.
Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban are making the most of their time here in Australia. It was a recent trip to a kebab shop that had the Hollywood couple wowing locals.
Yeah, Nicole and Keith stopped by Manly Seaside Kebabs for a tasty treat.
And for those of you who believe that long-form interrogative interviews died when Lee Sales left 7:30, well, I give you the most confrontational, explosive interview since Frost Nixon with Sunrise kebab shop owner.
How exciting was it to have Nicole and Keith in your store? And most importantly, what did they order?
Is there any time of the day when a kebab isn't appropriate?
I've got to ask, do you have a specialty dish? Is there something that Keith hasn't tried yet that maybe he should give a go?
Mate, I'm going to get him to try the lamb kebab.
What a story. How good.
Good on you, and thanks for the great kebabs.
Oh, they'll be studying that interview at journalism school for decades to come. And in international news this summer, there was almost a major diplomatic incident as a mysterious foreign balloon was spotted over America.
Bluey, the lovable blue heeler pup from Australia, is making her debut in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade.
Yes, fun fact though, Bluey was actually Australia's first balloon in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade since the Babadook in 2015. Summer, of course, is also the season of sport in this country, and the New Year's cricket test in Sydney gave us a telling sign that maybe COVID is finally behind us.
Matt Renshaw has actually tested positive to COVID. Now, he will play, but he's keeping a safe distance.
And he is in the starting 11, of course. He will play, and he'll play a full part.
Yes, that's right. At the third test against South Africa in Sydney, Australian cricketer Matthew Renshaw tested positive to COVID and played anyway. Never even bothered to put a mask on. Well, as Scott Morrison would say, Australia is literally
taking wickets in the virus.
They are indeed.
Indeed. Taking wickets with the virus and batting with the virus and standing 50 centimetres away unmasked from the other players during the national anthem with the virus. We now do everything with the virus. Someone else who's definitely over COVID is the Today Show's Carl Stefanovic.
As you know, I'm not a glowing ambassador for more than 2 shots. I've just decided that I've had COVID a couple of times and I'm done with the vaccines.
Wow, what a surprise. A millionaire TV host with paid sick leave doesn't want to get vaccinated anymore. Well, that's fine by me. All the more jabs for me. If I get sick with COVID again, I can't afford to pay my rent. So I'd be happy to fight waning immunity with a jab every morning with my coffee. Yum, yum, tasty vaccines. Nom, nom, nom. One country that isn't completely over COVID yet, though, is China, which only just ripped the Band-Aid off its COVID zero policy in December, which led to Australia having to take some steps to protect itself.
The federal government has today acted on concerns about China's surging COVID cases, announcing that travellers arriving from there will be required to take a pre-departure COVID test.
Yes, that's right. Incoming travellers from China were required to take a COVID test before coming to Australia. But why exactly? If it turned out they were positive, they're legally allowed to do whatever they wanted here. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Lee. It appears as though you've tested positive for COVID. Well, on your way, enjoy your shopping trip. Oh, one more thing. Is there any chance you could just do us a favour and wear a set of cricket pads and bat in the test this afternoon? That'd be great. And if I saw one sign that the media has definitely moved on from COVID, it was the sight of the ABC's chief COVID alarmist and doom-monger Dr. Norman Swan out doing fluffy lifestyle reports.
Welcome to the programme. Later, we'll see Dr. Norman Swan in an ice bath.
Okay. Slowing it down.
Well, I can't pretend that it's not cold. It is freezing.
Geez, a slight change in tone from his reports this time 3 years ago, don't you think?
If you let the pandemic go unchecked, huge numbers won't be able to receive treatment and will die. It's not just the elderly who die, it's 30 and 40-year-olds with no obvious risk factors.
You're all gonna die! Well, anyways, thank God we've moved on and nobody is dying from COVID anymore. Thank God, right?
Right now, COVID is putting 50 times more Australians in hospital than the flu and killing between 50 and 100 times more people.
Meanwhile, the ABC's chief COVID statistician, Casey Briggs, has even been demoted to reading other boring news stories.
Good evening, Casey Briggs with ABC News. Former Prime Minister Kevin Rudd will soon be headed to Washington as Australia's next ambassador to the United States.
Dr. Rudd brings unmatched experience to the role.
Hang on a second, Dr. Rudd? Dr. Rudd? What is he a doctor of? Backstabbing and handball? Anyways, it turns out Dr. Rudd wasn't the only nerd that our Prime Minister had to contend with this summer.
One of the world's richest people, Bill Gates, is meeting with Prime Minister Anthony Albanese at Kirribilli House.
We haven't met before, but I've admired your work.
Yes, turns out Albo's a big fan of Gates' early work, especially Clippy the talking paperclip, and of course the Microsoft Windows calculator, without which Albo never could have done the numbers against Gillard. True fact. It wasn't just all nerd talk, there were some actual policy announcements from the federal government this summer, like this one.
The federal government is promising to usher in a new era of support for Australia's creative industries with a $300 million boost to arts funding. The 5-year plan includes the establishment of a poet laureate.
Yes, and knowing federal Labor, I can probably guess who they're going to pick as their first poet laureate. My guess is a certain ex-Prime Minister.
This language. Dad, tell these dickheads in the embassy, tell that bloody interpreter.
What a beautiful way with words. Move over, Carol Ann Duffy. Look her up. The Liberals, of course, were absolutely incensed that Anthony Albanese would prioritise the arts, of all things. Here's Deputy Liberal leader Susan Lee.
The arts is important, but this announcement demonstrates the government's misplaced priorities. They promised an art gallery in Alice Springs, and what Alice Springs needs is more police on the streets.
Yes, how dare the government talk about the arts when there's any other problems occurring? The Liberals have decided the current Alice Springs crime wave is Anthony Albanese's Hawaii moment that he must be hammered on at every opportunity, forgetting, of course, last I checked, crime is a local issue, not a federal one, and Prime Ministers aren't Santa Claus and can't be everywhere all at once. Instead, the Coalition and the Murdoch media are all asking, how dare Albanese spend any time anywhere other than Alice Springs? Doesn't he know his job is to be fighting crime 24/7 like Batman?
The Prime Minister spent a lot of time at the tennis, enjoying corporate hospitality, but there are pressing issues in relation to the safety of Indigenous Australians in Alice Springs.
So the Prime Minister should visit Alice Springs.
There are tennis matches that went longer than Anthony Albanese's visit on the ground in Alice Springs.
Of course, no sign of Albo. He's not interested. He did his couple hours on the ground. Off he went to the tennis to chug back beers.
Well, do you reckon he'll spend as long at the Mardi Gras as he managed to spend? Certainly not as long as he spent at the tennis.
No, that was 3
days.
Just look at the optics of this. Look at this being at some massive, colourful celebration in the streets of Sydney when the absolute mess that Labor have helped contribute to both at federal level and territory level in Northern Territory and particularly Alice Springs has not been solved.
You got to love Sky News' outlook here. You know, the coalition have been in power for roughly 21 of the last 27 years, but every current societal problem is a direct result of the last 9 months of the Albanese Labor government. Why haven't they fixed everything already? Also, don't you think it's funny how the Liberals hate Anthony Albanese attending the tennis, but never had an issue with all the times Scott Morrison attended the footy, even like, say, in mid-March 2020, when Australia was facing its biggest crisis in generations with COVID lapping at our shores. On the same day Morrison announced he was banning mass gatherings, he also said, of course I'm going to the footy this weekend.
Welcome to the program. Mass gatherings of more than 500 people are set to be cancelled from Monday as Australian authorities try to limit the spread of coronavirus.
Well, I do still plan to go to the football on Saturday, as I said, because this is an arrangement we're putting in place for next week as a precaution.
Anyway, speaking of massive hypocrites, this week we had, oh yes, you hear that? It's the honeymoon ending for the Albanese government.
The government has rejected calls for Communications Minister Michelle Rowland to resign after she accepted $19,000 in donations from a gambling agency before the federal election.
I have and will continue to comply with the disclosure requirements of the AEC, the Register of Members' Interests and the Ministerial Code of Conduct.
No need to worry, the Communications Minister complied with all the necessary political financing rules, which proves our entire political system is corrupted by money and nobody wants to do anything about it. But personally, I'm amazed nobody saw this coming when the Sportsbet app actually listed Michelle Rowland as the 2-to-1 favourite for being the first Labor minister to resign in disgrace. Damn it. Knew I should have gone for a same sitting week multi. Anyways, back to Indigenous reconciliation, and last week was the 15th anniversary of Dr. Rudd's apology to the stolen generations, and I'll give you one guess who couldn't be bothered turning up yet again.
Notably absent from the anniversary breakfast this morning, Peter Dutton says he wishes he made a different choice in 2008.
And the Prime Minister's frequently able to point it out that I didn't attend the chamber for the apology 15 years ago. I've apologised for that in the past, and I repeat that apology again today.
Yes, make sure you don't invite Peter Dutton to your wedding or he'll boycott it on purpose and apologise, but miss your 15th anniversary party on purpose again anyway. You know, like a normal, emotionally stable and empathetic human being does.
I failed to grasp at the time the symbolic significance to the stolen generation of the apology.
Yes, Peter Dutton says he finally grasps the symbolic significance of the apology, so you think he might be supportive of the even more significant voice to Parliament that's being proposed. Right?
I think the voice is not going to get up. I don't think it's going to be successful.
I want an outcome that's going to bring an end to the violence, the sexual assaults on children taking place in Alice Springs at the moment. I want reconciliation to improve in our country. I don't want to see the escalation in domestic violence that we've seen. And I want a model that is going to help those kids enjoy the life that I would expect my kids to enjoy in a capital city.
Yes, that's right. Peter Dutton is basically saying he's not going to support the voice to Parliament because it doesn't solve all the problems facing all Indigenous people immediately. You know, like his government was famous for fixing. Anyways, it's quickly becoming abundantly clear that the main reason Peter Dutton and the coalition are going to oppose the voice is because Anthony Albanese is in favour of it. And for all their endless talk about wanting outcomes that improve people's lives, they've quickly forgotten that in their last decade in power, the only lives they seem to improve were the lives of landlords, CEOs and shareholders. Hilariously, people like Peter Dutton and Indigenous Coalition Senator Jacinta Napajimpa-Price have declared their opposition to the voice while simultaneously saying that what Indigenous people need is for their voice to somehow be heard by political leaders in Canberra. Wait, what?
If there is a strong Indigenous voice coming out of the Northern Territory at the moment that they want the Prime Minister to lead, to act and to help them out, but the Prime Minister is not listening to that voice, then I think most Australians would say, well, why not?
We don't need a voice, we need ears. We need our leadership to have to use their ears and to listen to community.
I want to make sure that those voices who have the ability to make the changes and the practical outcomes and the improvements for kids and women and families on the ground, that's the voice that I want to hear.
Yeah, maybe Dutton and Price are right. If only there was some way Indigenous people could be regularly consulted and listened to by our Parliament on the issues that affect them. Why hasn't anybody thought of a way to do this? If they figure it out, maybe we could vote on it in a referendum maybe. Dutton and Price would support that, right? So in conclusion, it looks like the political year is beginning to take shape. We've got an opposition determined to set reconciliation back an entire generation just so they can score some political points against a popular new Prime Minister. We've got a new government whose modus operandi appears to be nothing more than appearing slightly less corrupt than the other guys they replaced. And all the while, the media is more focused on what kebab shop our Hollywood stars went to than holding any of these politicians to account.
Good on you and thanks for the great kebabs.
I know it's only February, but right now the political landscape in Australia feels so mean and dirty it makes me want to have a prolonged ice bath. Right, Norman Swan?
Okay.